Welcome, everybody. I'm joined here by our first speaker from the
Good, af-
United Kingdom,
good
Sarah.
afternoon. Good afternoon. Enjoying this sunny, beautiful afternoon in the UK. It's the first time we've had sun in about 3 weeks, so very privileged to see the sun, that beautiful ball in the sky.
Webinar long and prosper, Sarah. I'll come up with my Star Wars joke. I know how to get one and I'm hoping you can make it. But I wanted to talk to you about why we're doing this webinar, and it's the idea came to me from the audience, and I'm wondering if you can kind of relate this to your own personal experience. I mean, this is just before we start. I mean, this isn't the main thing. Is people saying that getting alignment internally on AI implementation is really, really difficult, and that's their biggest headache. This is from the CIOs.
Yeah, yeah. I think getting alignment on any technology within any public sector, private sector is difficult because I think everyone has their own preconceptions about what it is. And especially around AI, there's so much sort of bad press at the moment. And I don't think it's helping particularly. And I think when startups especially want to have and use technology for good and they have great intentions, I think sometimes the bad press is kind of like just stuck behind them and dragging them back. And I think companies do become risk adverse. They're worried about the repercussions of things going wrong rather than what benefits technology can bring to said company. So I think with partnerships, it's really about all being on the same page at the same time, and communication is key. You've got to talk, you've got to chat and align the processes together. But it's tough. It is tough. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, I think it's going to get a lot easier talking about AI because there'll be something else. There'll be something else. And AI will just be another thing that we use. And it's not really, because AI has been around for a long, long time. I mean, I think it was a webinar we were on a few months ago now. The chap was like the guru of AI and he was talking about stuff from the 70s.
Bill
And
Hall.
that's it.
Bill Hall.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And for him, it's like, it's just another thing. But I think, yeah, it's so much, I think, for people to take in, especially if it's, you're coming from a non-technical background as well. It could be a scary thing. So I think again, it's important to put it into perspective, and really look at what it can do for you. People are scared about losing their jobs as well. That's a massive thing. And let's be honest, the global economy isn't doing that well at the moment for different reasons that obviously we won't talk about on here, but to be diplomatic. But yeah, it certainly is an interesting subject. And I think any digitization of anything scares people. And I was around for some of the first digital launches within the NHS, just apps, and apps
That's what
now
I
are
wanted to
just,
talk to you about too, Sarah. We're doing the webinar properly now. We're starting properly. NHS, which by the way is the National Health Service in the United Kingdom. Can you talk to us from your experience about how do you relate to people? This is for startups or tech vendors when they're dealing with the public sector. And I guess also maybe people in the public sector and how they can communicate what they need from their counterparties in the tech on the tech side.
yeah, yeah. So I'll give a little bit of background about me really quickly, just so people understand sort of what I've done and where I come from, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah, thank you. So I've worked with the NHS and global care providers in public and private sectors, and I've been doing that now, since around 2014. And I like to look at ways to improve patients' access to healthcare services, mainly using digital technologies, but also boots on the ground as well. So working with patient forums, working with practitioners, etc. And my actual experience runs from patient appointment booking apps to diagnostic tools to mental health solutions. And I always stick to my main ethos, which is to provide access to the right care at the right time while improving outcomes, and using the data for prevention rather than cure when possible. Now, what you just mentioned about aligning with your counterparties, that's, I think, just a really, really good question. And from sort of an interpersonal angle, because when you have strategy, I think that only gets you halfway there. So when you're working across the public sector and a startup, I think the real work is understanding the people behind the roles, and that's not an easy thing. And I don't say that lightly at all. But personally, the first thing I try to do, and I do reiterate, try to do, is try to recognise that two sides often operate under very different pressures. So if you look at the public sector, public sector colleagues are usually responsible for things like safety, compliance, and budgets. Whilst when you look at startups such as myself, looking at previous experience, we're under pressure around speed, innovation, and proving value. So when you understand pressures that somebody's under, their behaviour does make a lot more sense. And it stops you from taking things personally, and tries to help you meet where they are. And again, it's very difficult not to take things personally. So when it's your baby, when it's your invention, when it's your solution, you think it's the best thing in the world, but you have to try not to take things personally. The second piece is listening for what people aren't saying. So in the public sector, people often communicate indirectly because they're navigating constraints, things like governance, budgets, risk. And if someone does seem hesitant, it's rarely resistance. It's usually that they're accountable for a system that you can't see. So I try to ask sort of gentle, open questions that surface those hidden constraints, without putting anybody on the spot. And again, you don't want to hold a spotlight over anyone's face. You want to just have a really sort of gentle, open conversation with them. Another big one is matching communication styles. So if you're looking at the public sector, their teams tend to value sort of clarity, predictability, and reassurance. Startups tend to value momentum, creativity, and process. So when you're aware of that, you can adjust your style, slow down a little, be transparent about risks, or bring people into conversations and processes really early on. And that, I think, does build trust very, very quickly. And then there's the good old empathy. And I'm not talking about the fluffy kind, which we all love, of course. Earlier, I think I was having a conversation about my cat. So I can't, I am guilty of that as well. But I mean the practical kind. So if you're a startup, spend time understanding what a day actually looks like for a clinician or a manager. If you're in the public sector, so on the flip of the coin, spend time understanding what it feels like for a startup to build something with limited resources and a short runway. When both sides do that, what you find is the dynamic shifts from negotiating to collaborating. And that really, really helps us to move things forwards. And finally, I think it helps to remember that everyone on these projects ultimately wants the same thing: better outcomes for patients and staff. When you anchor conversations in that shared purpose, it becomes much easier to navigate differences in pace, culture, or language. So for me, aligning across sectors is really about curiosity, empathy, and adaptability. If you get the human side right, the strategic alignment becomes much easier.
I've also noticed a difference between pharma and healthcare. And maybe Andrew, who's going to come on later, can correct me if I'm wrong. But in pharma, it's yes, but.
Yeah.
And healthcare tends to be yes, and.
Yeah.
And it's that simple framing makes a massive difference. That's not the only question I wanted to ask you, Sarah. And thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, of course, of course.
You know what? One thing I keep on hearing is from the tech startups is there's something they're not telling us. And then I hear medical people in healthcare saying, we have liability concerns that we don't want to share with these people. I'm wondering if you could speak to that. I guess that's a trust issue. How do people surface that and get past that?
That's a really, really good question. So if you want to make sure that sort of everyone is sort of rowing in the same direction, so to speak, it can be a trust question. So because I think the relationship alone isn't enough. When you have a big public sector organisation that works with a small, fast-moving startup, the real sort of challenge is aligning two completely different operating systems. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way I think about it is you have to sort of engineer alignment. It doesn't just happen. So first, both sides need a clear sort of shared mission, not a broad statement like, oh, we're going to improve patient outcomes, but something more specific and measurable. For example, reducing missed appointments by a certain percentage. That becomes the North Star that everyone can rally around. And then I think, again, having sort of proper joint governance, goodwill is great, but it doesn't scale. So when it does scale is when you have executive sponsors, a shared steering group, a single roadmap, and clear decision-making rights. That structure then keeps everyone moving when the organisations are operating at different speeds. And thirdly, embedding people across the boundary makes a huge difference. When the startup team sits in clinics and the clinicians join sprint reviews, you suddenly get a shared language and shared context, and it stops the whole us versus them before that dynamic starts. And that's the last thing that you want. And then the fourth piece I think is really important is agreeing on pace. Startups want to move fast. Public healthcare needs predictability. So if you set a schedule that works for both, like regular check-ins, monthly milestones, quarterly resets, that creates momentum without overwhelming the system. Then there are incentives. So public sector teams are often rewarded for reducing risks. Startups are rewarded for growth. So if you align the incentives around shared outcomes and shared success metrics, when the incentives line up, behaviours line up. They should do anyway. Not always, obviously, there's always caveats to this. And then finally, communication. In big health organisations, silence is often interpreted as a problem. In startups, silence usually means that people are busy building. So you over-communicate updates, blockers, wins, decisions to keep everyone sort of rowing in the same direction. But when you put all of that together, a clear mission, strong governance, embedding teams, aligned pace and aligned incentives and disciplined communication. I think that's when partnership really, really does work. Yeah. And I'll put in a Star Trek quote for you.
Do it.
We're not trying to go rogue Klingon here. We're aiming for Starfleet compliant warp speed. Terrible dad joke, but I thought I'd add that for you.
We do one more question. We go to the next speaker very quickly. A morale boost, the last hurrah. How do you turn things around when relationships get a bit frayed? People are annoyed with each other.
Yeah, I mean that's really important because all of the best projects do hit rough patches. I think as we've probably, everyone on this call's probably experienced. And when things go wrong and relationships feel a bit frayed, the instinct is to often fix the work. But personally, in my experience, I think you have to fix the human side first. So the first thing I try to do is acknowledge the reality without assigning blame. Something as simple as this has been really tough on all of us. It lowers the temperature. People relax when they feel seen rather than judged. And I think the second thing is curiosity. So when trust is low, people often stop saying what they really think. So I try to make space for honest conversations, not to interrogate, but to understand, well, what's been frustrating, what's been unclear, what do they need from us to feel confident again? And when people feel heard, resentment starts to dissolve. And then again, I think coming back, sort of clawing everything back, focusing on shared purpose. I think it's easy to forget in the middle of the headache that everyone is ultimately trying to deliver the same meaningful thing. And then re-anchoring the team in that shared goal, whether it's improving patient experience or reducing pressure on staff, I think helps shift the dynamic from us versus them back to we're in this together. And another big part of repairing trust is not telling, is showing. Small, consistent actions matter much more than big promises. Delivering on commitment, turning up prepared, and communicating proactively. I think those behaviours really do build confidence far faster than any speech.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for starting the event with me.
My pleasure. Sorry for the cheesy Star Trek.
No, I wanted cheesy Star Trek. And Dr. Danya, And let's see. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Rosie. Thank you.
And you you come from a clinical background, and now you're building and about to go to market with a very kind of was a multi-digital twin platform. I don't know if I described it properly there, Dr. Danya. I'm wondering if you could speak from your experience and about our topic today. And I wonder if you could start with advice for tech companies from your perspective on aligning with the clinical team on
Right.
implementation.
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for having me on board. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, very rightly said, I have a clinical background. I've been working as an internist for the last 10, 12 years, and now I've transitioned into the world of innovation. And having said that, I can speak from both the sides because, as a clinician, I've got one specific lens. And when it comes from a tech company perspective, then of course I'm dealing with one of my tech innovation myself, talking about digital twin innovation. So yes, I can speak from that lens as well. So when it comes to the point on how to align teams on health AI implementations, and of course it's an area where there's a lot of questions and queries, that pops up from both the side, from the clinician aspect and from the tech companies aspect for sure. So I think from my perspective, I would like to say and point out that there's a very key difference between both the approaches, and we can always converge to one single point when both the teams are aligned on the same common pathways, that is according to the patient's narrative. So when we talk about the clinician's insight, then of course the clinicians, and me being a clinician myself, we are always patient centric. Whenever we talk to the health tech companies, we want to be extra sure like what that innovation is going to do with the patients, what is going to be the end result, what's going to be the safety profile, and anything that comes to the patient centric approach. That is what the clinician is going to be thinking about it. So that clinician oversight, or let's say that clinician thought, is often misinterpreted as kind of a reluctance, or let's say as a friction that the tech companies feel that we are holding so many things to our chest. So this is the narrative that I would like to give to the tech companies as a clinician. But when it comes to the tech companies, because now my role is switched, now I'm sitting on the other side of the table. So when it comes to the tech companies, then of course we feel that the clinicians are not on board. They have a lot of reservations. There's a lot of resistance, or let's say there's a lot of friction from their side, and we can never reach to a common point. So there comes a point of the shared language. We have to have a shared language, and by shared language we mean that when I as a clinician am talking something to the tech company, they should perceive it exactly in the same manner in which I am trying to communicate. And if the tech company is trying to sell me numbers, or they're trying to sell me scalability, iterations, and anything that is related to the technical side, I should be reading their message in between the lines. So when that point is merged, that shared language is talked, and we all play the same music, then there's no point that we do not reach a common point. So here is the gap which I certainly feel it should be bridged. And this is what I'm saying from my own personal experience, because I am tasting both flavors. I'm trying to introduce digital twins in the world of AI. And when I talk about digital twins, I'm talking about one of the state-of-the-art digital twins that we are working on. And of course, when I go and try to sell this point to the medical fraternity, to the healthcare territories and healthcare industry, of course I have to be very, very sure who I'm talking to, and I need to address their concerns. So I think these are the key points which we should, as a tech company, keep it in mind. Shared language, clarity. Clarity is very, very important. There should be no black box AI, because everybody's talking about AI, and AI is AI in everybody's mind, but we need to have a shared common point of who we are talking to, what we are trying to communicate. Clarity and no gray zone should be should be the ideology. Everything should be crystal clear and no over-promising by the tech companies. I think this is also one of the very, very important points.
Thank you for that. I interviewed Olivier Petit recently, and he said that too. Don't overpromise. And I think it's better to ask for permission than forgiveness. I think actually you did a really good job of covering what I was about to ask you. So I'm going to ask you if you could speak to your experience and how about your journey, about moving from the clinical, moving across the table, and how that journey has shaped your perspective about alignment.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and I think it's very important as well because it has shaped and it has influenced the way I have shaped my own team, and I've acknowledged the cultural differences as well. When we talk to different people, we are talking to different ideologies, and one has to connect and resonate with what and to whom we are talking to. So I think now that I've transitioned my role, I do feel a key responsibility on the individual as well, that we should be updated to the recent innovations. I'm talking specifically for the clinicians because we have a blend of physicians out there. Few people talk for AI, few people talk against AI, right? So if we have to be futuristic, we have to be with the innovation, we have to be on one single page so that we can deal with the future as well. So we need to make sure that we are flexible and open to learn. That flexibility is needed from the physician's point of view, and this is what I personally believe that I've learned as well, because I've made a huge transition. I mean, it was not easy to be in the critical care departments and then ultimately switching it right to the non-clinical zone, and that too in the world of digital twins that has so much of competition. So I think openness to learn, flexibility, and making a way forward through learning, I think this is also one of the key experiences that I have learned. And also when we interact with different kind of people coming from different countries and with different healthcare regulations, of course, every country has their own healthcare regulations. Innovation for one country might be unsafe thing for the other. So, we need to have that gap understood very clearly so that we can move and we can make progression and success out of it. And also, like I said before, my understanding of, because at that point in time, I was only wearing a spectacle of a physician. I was not thinking beyond the box. So when we talk about futuristic innovations, we have to think out of the box. And I think this is one of the big lessons that I've learned as an individual for sure.
Dr. Daniel, are you able to join us in the after party?
Yes, no issues. I would love to. Yes.
And by the way, about the after party, we started in 35 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a group of people on LinkedIn Live. If you're on LinkedIn Live, please, I don't know if someone could share the Zoom link in the LinkedIn Live chat with the LinkedIn Live audience, because the LinkedIn Live ends in 35 minutes.
Okay.
The after party is only on Zoom. You don't have to worry about Dr. Danya. You're on the right link. If you're on Zoom, you just stay on Zoom. If you're on LinkedIn Live, you have to hop the fence to join us in the after party. And the reason why is we're not being snobby. We can't pull you out of the audience and bring you on screen if you're on LinkedIn Live. We can't do that. But in LinkedIn, on Zoom, we can turn on your camera, we can turn on your microphone, we can bring you on the stage. That's why we do it. So sure. We're gonna bring you back in about 35 minutes for the after party, Dr. Danya. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Chris, are you there?
I am not.
Where are you?
I'm hiding.
You're hiding. Boom.
I was too scared, too intimidated to follow up after Dr. Danya, so I decided to duck out.
You're not that shy. I think you've changed roles. And Chris and I are a part of a Discord group together. He's the host of Hope, Power, and Healthcare, which is a Discord group. Maybe I'm not supposed to say that. And the podcast, which if you haven't checked out, you should check out. And you've worn a lot of hats. And you've got a big background in behavioral, mental health support. And now you're on the data science side. You work for, I think, a number of organizations, Chris. I've probably done a very bad job of introducing you, but
It's okay because I do a very bad job like consolidating all the whatever stuff I'm up to. So I'll maybe use this as an opportunity to level set there. So been in health tech since 2009. So we're talking 17 years. Started in a sales role, moved into operations. Then around 2018, got obsessed with data science and AI in healthcare, and haven't looked back since. Have worked in that field in a variety of contexts. Starting out was in a company that was developing predictive models to identify people that were likely to need communications around certain services like chronic kidney disease or heart issues, like just a variety of various service needs from a hospital perspective. Then the behavioral side took on a huge interest in A, natural language processing, but B, really understanding the intersect of digital mental health and where chatbots could play a role. And in 2022, took up a role with a company called Wobot, which was offering an application that people could talk to in times of need, and it would respond. It was developed by like at the very top end, Dr. Ali Darcy, clinical psychologist who had a deeply integrated team there of clinical leadership as well as technical leadership, and that I saw it as a great opportunity to be able to nestle in and work on both sides. Then in April of last year, started a company called Modular Feedback, where a lot of the implementations and the science that I was able to participate in and lead on these, working at these various companies. Now we work directly with digital health innovators, mostly within healthcare, a little bit outside of healthcare as well, on implementing, like our theme is reclaim the algorithm. So it's taking the concept of these algorithms that are developed but in a bunch of different circles across hundreds of years, and big tech has come to kind of dominate the narrative around this stuff. But really, a lot of the stuff is based on open source tech. It's based on people that really do want to put things out to help people, and the reclaim concept is just is to realign around things that are of interest to health systems and health insurers, rather than like the big tech goals of getting clicks and engagement and doom scrolling.
again. And somebody said reclaim the algorithm in one of my interviews.
They did?
Yeah, yes, it did.
Good.
And he was quoting you.
Oh, okay, cool.
Well, he didn't quote you, but I knew he was quoting you. And he told me later. I got that from Chris. You know what? I remember we had you on a webinar in I did. I think it was in the end of January last year. And I've actually asked you this follow-up question. And because a lot of the times when I'm talking to people, they're very distrustful of engineers. And you made a comment about inspiring the engineers. Engineers need to be inspired too. Engineers are people too. I wonder if you could speak to how can you, and when I got this topic, we got it from the audience. The person who raised it said, this is a cultural issue. Does inspiration play a role? I imagine the answer is going to be yes. But how can you inspire people on a team when you've got people from different disciplines and also different countries who may relate to each other very differently? How do you inspire a team like that? Or should you try?
Yeah, you should 100% try. Because I think that a lot of people get caught up in the mechanics of their role and they forget about the purpose. But when they're reminded on the purpose, and when they can align with something that is deeper than code and spreadsheets, then they become a lot more inspired and creative in how they approach the problems that are in front of them. And I can't even take credit for that line of thinking. So back in 2019, I went to a HIMSS conference where the CIO of Cleveland Clinic at the time, Edward Marks, was speaking. And he spoke about the fact that he's constantly on the, even though he was he is and was a technical leader at the time, he would always do everything that he could to remind his team to even go out and volunteer. Like even he himself would volunteer at some of the things that the health system had to offer, to remind himself that all these these systems and tools and things like that they were building, to fully remind that everything that they're building has an impact on the patient. So to Dr. Daniel's point on, hey, we're always thinking, like as clinicians, always thinking from a patient-centered perspective. We need to get that thinking into our technical teams as well, because I've seen the difference, honestly, between someone who just looks at their job as a series of tasks that come in through Jira and you have to go and accomplish these engineering feats, versus if you are working with a team and reminding, like one of my clients, for example, is a Medicare Advantage health plan. And we can look at our work on provider data accuracy, for example, as like a spreadsheet challenge and an accuracy score, or we can look at it as if someone is browsing our website, browsing for information on what kind of coverage they'll receive for care. We want to reassure this 84-year-old woman, for example, that she's not going to have to drive 45 minutes to see an endocrinologist. So if you change that narrative, then it changes the way that people approach and want to solve problems, and takes them outside of just following that rote task to figure out what the purpose is behind it, and like coming together as a team to enable what the actual mission is.
You did a podcast recently about working with neurodivergent people, and actually, I find this is a big deal, sitting in my seat, because first of all, a lot of founders are neurodivergent themselves. I think about 40% of entrepreneurs are neurodivergent. I
didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, 40% of entrepreneurs and 40% of the prison population. Especially the older ones. If somebody's starting their fifth company in their 60s and purple is their favorite color, then that's a tell. But I'm wondering, what did you learn during that podcast that maybe we can speak to this audience about, in terms of aligning when you've got people who are neurodivergent, and people are like, and usually there's somebody on the team will know, okay, this person thinks differently. Jose, how do I talk to this person? How do I talk to the founder? I know I know you know a lot about this. How do I align my communication, my working style with them?
So thank you for referencing that. That's a podcast episode that we put out a couple of weeks ago. So anybody who is neurodivergent or has neurodivergent team members, I would urge to go and seek that episode out. We did an interview with Dr. Sarah Adler, who is neurodivergent and was open, it was awkward, having the conversation at first. I said, hey, would you want to come in and talk about your leadership style and what being neurodivergent is in this space, like what you bring to the table. And Melissa Riley, co-host, is also neurodivergent. And, what I learned, especially hearing Dr. Adler speak, was just that, there's playbooks in there and common corporate behavior and stuff like that. And she was just 100% open with her company about how that doesn't work for her, and it doesn't work for a lot of people that she hires. So she's building what I think that what she's building is kind of the future of how we should allow people to show up. So she's just got all kinds of accommodations, meeting styles, and patterns and things like that she's tailored to her team and that work for her team. So rather than taking a generic HR playbook, she's listening to her team. She's allowing people to be real about their needs. She's checking in with the way that she communicates with others, and allowing people she's just disarming to her team members, and allows people to come as they are, and by putting herself as an example and not on a pedestal, she's creating a really different type of culture that I think I think it should be studied straight up.
Hey, Chris, are you gonna be able to join us for the after party?
Yeah, sure thing.
Thank you so much, Chris. And Andrew, are you ready? Are you ready for the hot seat, Andrew?
I am.
And thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
And some of you might recognize Andrew because I interviewed him in advance. I like to interview one of the speakers before the webinars to kind of like round up my thinking. And I appreciate you doing that, Andrew. And Andrew, I think you worn a couple of different hats. Pharma, enterprise healthcare. Now you're in the Millennium Falcon, starting up your own company. And I want to, and I get the impression, maybe speaking to you, you didn't really say this, that maybe your thinking has evolved over your career. I'm wondering if you could speak to your personal journey, your personal experience, and how that informs how you feel now.
Yeah, I mean, so one, thanks for having me here. And yeah, I had a great time doing the chats before leading up to this, and great that we were able to share those on LinkedIn also. I think a couple things. So I like to introduce myself as I started my professional life as an engineer. So did electrical computer engineering as an undergrad, and then always had an interest in medicine, right? And at one point was thinking that I was going to pursue a clinical career. Ended up coming back to UCSF and doing medical informatics instead. And so they're kind of 1 foot in technology, data, 1 foot in really understanding clinical practice and how do we get data out of delivering care to patients, and then how do we get tools and technologies and whatnot back in. So I feel like I started professional life as an engineer, and then somewhere along the way trained as a scientist. Right. And so kind of then shifting my mindset, shifting my perspective there. And then coming out, my first job was in defense aerospace. Just, it was a job, right? And it seemed fun. So let's go do it while I figure out what I want to do when I grow up. But always interested in medicine. And so kind of going down that path. And so I think over that time, I really did start off with like, oh, these are really cool technologies. This is a technology problem. We're going to solve it. And especially when you're building an airplane, there are a lot of technology problems, right? And we're trying to do all these really cool things with unmanned airplanes at the time. But I feel like one of the challenges around health AI and AI in general, and as we're looking to implement things and how do we get these teams aligned, we oftentimes hear, and I think you mentioned it earlier, that it's not a tech problem, right? It's a cultural problem, or it's some other type of problem within there. And for me, it's really almost in a sense like it's a human problem. And especially when you're in healthcare, at the end of the day, it is the patient that we're all trying to help. Doesn't matter what your role is here, whether you're a tech person in healthcare or whether you're a physician, nurse, whatever else that might be. It's very easy to lose sight of the patient. And just to make it a little bit more concrete here, I think it was a couple days ago with Neatly, and so I guess just a quick primer for Neatly. We're a direct-to-patient app, and we help patients before, during, and after care. Right. And so how do you prep questions that you're going to ask your physician? We are an AI scribe for patients to record that conversation while you're navigating care with your provider. And then afterwards, how do we help you operationalize that with reminders, follow-up questions, and whatnot? But we truly believe that this is an opportunity for AI to help the patient-doctor relationship or the patient-provider, patient-clinician relationship, and not to replace that. Why? Because that human element is so critical to it. And within this, we had a conversation the other day about like, oh, well, can we do something around insurance to help patients, right? And especially in the US, insurance is very complex. At least once a year, you have to think about it because you're choosing your next insurance. But sometime along the way, you're looking at your bills, your copays, you're trying to figure all this stuff out. Can we do something around that? Our team very quickly started talking about like, okay, what's our stack? Can we do this? Can we do that? But then there was a very conscious point in our conversation where it's like, we're going down this tech rabbit hole. We really should take a step back and do what is very simple, but extremely difficult in my experience, which is seek understanding, right? It's very easy to get into the problems, and I'm a geek, right? And so I enjoy the technology, the deep problems there. But taking a step back and saying, what is the problem we're really trying to solve? And in this case, for the patient, and when I was at UCSF and looking at things at kind of the more academic medical center perspective, helping clinicians, right? When I was at Roche and Genentech, it was very much how do I help our pharma teams work with real world data? So really seeking to understand the core problem really does then shift the entire conversation from being a tech problem to, is this a patient access problem? Is this a literacy problem? Is this something else that's really going on here that we want to dig into? And by understanding that problem, we now can see this is where technology fits in, this is where it doesn't, and we remember exactly why we're all here, right? And kind of that mission that we're working towards.
A lot of what you speak to comes down to leadership. Is that I heard this phrase once: in a team, everyone can be a leader. Everyone should be a leader. How does that play out? Because you're the founder, so you are the leader, or one of the leaders. I think you've got a co-founder. How does somebody who's maybe not have a C-level title play a leader in the kind of, in what you're describing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it dovetails very nicely with a mindset that, like I thank my mentors just over the years for helping me build this, in that I think we're all leaders, whether we like it or not. And at the very least, you have to be able to lead yourself. And when I say lead also, there is a very clear distinction in my mind between leading and managing. And so in this conversation, not getting too much into the weeds of defining these things, but for me, leadership is beyond just like, are things running on time, right? And keeping the trains going and whatnot there. But we're all leaders to ourselves. And then from there, we lead our peers. And then I think anybody who's been in a large company knows we always hear the term manage up, right? But I think in addition to managing up, you're also leading up. And because of that, I absolutely do agree. We're all leaders all the time. I think for me and any team that I've led in the past, I've always made this very clear that it's my job as a leader to guide us, right? And like I happen to have more experience in one area, but it's not that I'm coming in here with all the answers, right? And that I'm all knowing and whatever I say, we're going to do. And so making it very clear that people should be comfortable to speak up, but how do you speak up is really important, right? You can't just throw an idea out there and run away like you threw a Molotov cocktail or something. But if we're solution oriented, we're really understanding and we're seeking that, then all input is welcome. And then we can have a dialogue through it. There's also a time and place for having this, right? Like we're not going to duke it out in front of a customer and start hashing out ideas and whatnot there. And so I think as wherever you are sort of in the scheme of things, making it very clear to your teams that this is exactly how we want to be pushing the work forward, right, on behalf of patients ultimately, since we're all in healthcare here.
Thank you, Andrew. Are you able to stay for the after party?
Unfortunately, I will not be able to. But that said, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn. I can put my LinkedIn in the chat here. And always happy to catch
put
up
your
with
LinkedIn into
folks.
the chat, and I'll copy it into the LinkedIn live chat as well.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thank you.
And Dr. J. Let's see. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Jose.
Dr. J comes highly recommended. Conjly Dillon herself said, you got to have this guy. Well, she didn't say it that way, but.
Oh, thank you.
So it's like, so you got, Do I call you Dr. J?
Just call me Jay.
That's J. Sorry, that sounds kind of American,
Yes.
Dr. J. So, and you're in the United Kingdom, and you're in clinical background, and now you're in Medtech. Am I
Yes,
describing
correct.
that correctly?
Yes, correct.
And I wonder if we can ask you to relate your personal experience, and how it's informed. Because you've got this, you've made the journey just like Dr. Dania. And I think when I speak to clinicians who have switched sides of the table, I hear lots of different stories, and it's always interesting. But I wonder if you could relate what the journey's been like for you, and how it's informed how you see this issue of aligning.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for the invitation. Nice to be here. Thanks for the audience. And so a little bit background on myself. So my background, I'm a clinician scientist who spent times in medical affairs, National Health Service facing roles, and now as a founder of Lazy Technology. So building an AI-enabled healthcare platform. So I lived on all three sides, so clinical, system, and tech, so often simultaneously. So at Lazily, we're developing a software that analyzes medical grade thermal images to support musculoskeletal monitoring and help team identify early physiological stress before injury happens. So today's topic really resonate with me because I've been through all these different roles and I understand the common language. And from my personal experience, so the biggest alignment challenge, as the previous speakers, Sarah and Dr. Amir and Chris, they all said about this is the alignment is not about the alignment challenge is not about the capability, it's about the assumptions because clinicians, healthcare team, and developers all thought they were solving the same problem, but they were optimizing different things. So what helped was slowing down early and being very explicit about three things. So whose decision we're supporting, what constraint that we had to respect, and also how we translating between the teams to have a common language so we have a common goal. So once those things are clear, alignment stop being a constraint. It can become very clear and help us to design the whole project. So usually that, in my experience, that I have learned that so clinicians often focus on it's optimizing for safety, nuance, and individual patient context. So healthcare system, and as previous speaker says, it's focused on optimizing throughput, cost, governance, and risks. And tech teams often optimize for scalability, abstraction, and speed. So all these contexts are different. So each one working on different scale and looking at the different success matrix. So alignment is very important because as personal bias, we often think that we often assume that everyone's aligned, but placing those constraints ahead of time, aligning on the objectives, I think that will be really important for implementation.
It's interesting what you said there at the end. I spoke to Scott Martin. That's what he said. He used something similar. He goes, "Oh, we thought we were aligned, and then we found out we weren't." And Jay, will you be able to pop back on in about 8 minutes, and during the after party?
Yes, I'll be able to.
I'm gonna circle back to you in the after party. We've got, by the way, if you're in LinkedIn Live, I hope you see a Zoom link in the chat because the LinkedIn Live is ending in 8 minutes. I'm bringing you back on in 8 minutes, Jay.
Sure, thank you.
And Shana, are you there?
Hi, Jose. I'm right here.
Boom. Hello. I
Oh,
have to I have to give you a name. You're nameless right now. You're just saying panelist.
oh, I'm so sorry.
No, don't worry. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I woke up to snow, and it's not too often that people living in Spain can say that. Um, and I wondered, the first time I met you, you used the word Ubuntu, and I love that you talked about that. And I'm wondering if you could, and I'm speed running now
Yep.
because the webinar ends in 7 minutes. We're going to the after party. We're going to be going on, and we still have some people who haven't spoken. I wonder if you could speak to Ubuntu.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that we talked about neurodivergent population within the tech community. Chris talked about it. And I wanted to include that in the Ubuntu conversation here because being a software developer in my very early stage of my career, I was surrounded with neurodivergent people, and they were one of the best kinds of people to work with. Very focused, very simple, they don't ask for much. So, the point I want to make here is when we work with, to Dr. Dania's point, you're working with different teams, different perspectives. Everyone's coming from a different angle. We want alignment, right, across the team. But at the same time, we want to inspire creativity because without creativity, you can't create solutions that haven't been there before, right? And how do you communicate that? You have to create that culture where everyone is met where they are without judgment and everyone has the freedom to communicate and is given that creative freedom, right? To come forth with ideas and not shut them down. It's a culture change. It's very important. And that's how you create long lasting relationships, which is the family, right? Like when we meet, when we work, when we spend 8 hours, 9 hours, 15 hours at our workplace in a day, you are bringing your unique essence to the place. And in today's world where I'm going to call that out straight up here, most of us are putting questions on AI, getting the response, posting it on LinkedIn, talking about what our AI has produced. But where is our creativity? We are the ones who have to lead the responses and use AI as a support. So there has to be that beautiful blend where AI is included as part of the family too, but not as the one who's doing the critical thinking and coming up with solutions. Then we lose creativity and eventually we lose motivation. So when we create the right culture, people are automatically inspired and motivated. When we look at the bigger picture, the one who is the visionary of the organization, when you tie in the human use cases and the reasons we are coming up with the solutions, that automatically all these little factors build that beautiful culture, that beautiful family where everyone feels like our contribution matters. We are working towards something bigger than ourselves. And by the way, AI is my friend I'm going to use for support, but I'm not going to use its ideas. It's going to take my idea and maybe fine tune it. And I think that approach builds that strong Ubuntu, that strong family that can together collectively, the power of collective creativity, right? We can bring forth new innovations. That's so important. Not taking an old idea and recycling it. So that's my contribution here today.
Thank you. Do you mind if I kick you off and bring you back in 5 minutes?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And as we're starting the after party in 3 minutes, and Paolo,
Hi.
welcome. Hello.
Thanks.
I want to
Hello.
welcome. And Paolo's also in the snowy part of Italy.
Yeah. Slightly
And-
snowy.
Sorry, I'm not in Italy. He's in Italy, but it does snow in the Mediterranean. The
Yeah.
I wonder, Paolo, if you can comment.
Well, I have too many, so either I don't say anything, or I have to slash down to 99% to 1% of what I've carried. I've taken back from this really really very, very inspiring speeches. Everybody had something that touched really some chords. I would say that, as far as I can say, my experience is not technically. I'm not an engineer. I come from economics. I'm worked in marketing in industrial sectors and pharmaceutical, and then I'm a consultant, starting from compliance and then adapting into market entry, operations, all the aspects I've learned through marketing, industry, in product development, etc. So I'm a bit ignorant of everything, but quite experienced in putting leads together and the bits and pieces of operations and new product launches, etc. What I think, speaking about artificial intelligence in the specific, the first thing I feel it's a wonderful tool. So it's a tool, and the first thing I think of is the robot of Interstellar movie. That's the marine robot, the marine assistant, who is, you can program it to be either sarcastic, highly sarcastic, or not. At a certain moment, he's set into a slightly less ironic mood. I was quite, let's say, I always remember this piece of the movie because it reminds me of how technology can be in our everyday life. When we have something new that we are adopting, this can be a guidance, or it can be a tool. We can be subject, or we can be the ones who decide how to use it. Artificial intelligence is so powerful, for sure. I think we have a problem of understanding the boundaries of security and safety. Safety in the first instance, because, for example, also a car has a safety, has many benefits, but has safety aspects and issues. We have learned how to deal with these. All the digital world has enormous advantages. It's 30 years we are living with this technology, and we won't be able to do without, probably in the long run anyway. Like, we are not able anymore to live in a bush, in a forest alone. Somebody puts you in a forest tomorrow morning, and probably, I don't know, but myself, I wouldn't be able to survive for more than 2 or 3 days, probably. So we will need this technology. It is a technology. What we don't understand yet now, I think, is its boundaries in terms of safety and security. So that's where it starts to be a bit difficult to embed it into solutions that are, let's say, mainstream and are easily adopted, because we are still in an introduction phase. Introduction phases need a higher trust level compared to mature phases of any market entry, because people need to be convinced. And there is so much hype on benefits and on the risks that it's difficult for who is going to use this technology to decide whether to use it and to what extent, because he has to study so much and he hasn't got the time, because he has another job to do. A doctor has to be on the patient, and and also marketers who are not technicians, let's say, take for granted the validity of a solution. But this solution is daily questioned by mainstream communication, by social media, by many voices that advocate one choice against the other. It's quite inevitable, I think, because any new introduction in our lives is subject to a phase of discussion. This technology is so pervasive and so highly impactful that we are in a phase which is very critical. We risk sort of burning the opportunity and wasting the opportunity in some case, because either we decide to use it without having tested it properly, or we don't use it because we are not ready to carry the risk, or we don't have the competences in the company or in the adopting structure like a hospital in order to understand whether this solution is good or not for one owns processes. So I think the question of putting trust, but to sustain trust, is a big issue for who proposes new solutions with AI embedded. The more if this AI is substantial to the solution. So you don't have the solution without AI. In that case, the instance is existential. Either one is absolutely secure on that level, or otherwise it's very difficult to make it through the validation processes of organization so risk averted like hospitals. Hospitals can have, I would say, the healthcare sector as a whole has sandboxes where it can test everything. Anything can be tested. But then when you get to the National Health Service, which is a structured, just to give a name, which is a structured organization with a public weight, with a public objective, then the caution becomes so strong that it becomes a stopper for innovation, a stopping factor against innovation. Before getting innovation into mainstream operations, there is a long way. And the fact of getting teams understanding each other points is something that gives strength to the whole system. I'm seeing now a market entry of a very simple device for very simple on the user's end, but not so simple in the development phase, for enable people who cannot speak because they are in critical care. This device enables them to communicate. The need is very simple. The need is very basic and very human. It is very long to make it through all the validation processes and all the introduction phases that must be done. And every phase has the specialist of that phase. What we see is that it's very difficult to have cross-functional teams across the hospitals and across the company that, let's say, manage to see the surroundings around their own specialty. This is something that has always been in every company and in every structure, which is quite, I think, human, that one tends to be more focused on what he knows and less open to what he doesn't know very well. But once this surrounding area is made common and is nurtured as a growth factor for every single component, then it becomes a sort of element of each person luggage of knowledge. To overcome that first boundary is the difficult thing. It could be, maybe, I can see now in this contingent situation, let's say a potential way could be to try getting not in the shoes of the doctor, speaking of a developer, but in the sheets of the patient. Nobody wants to be a patient, actually, because we all want to be in a good shape for our whole life. But when we try to propose solutions for patients, not always we think of being a patient. We think of delivering a service or delivering an active action, something that's more sort of abstract approach, a very technical approach. It is not so easy to try to get into the patient's shoes and understand what he really could be thinking about what we are giving to him. First of all, our patient centricity is not always so much embedded. That's not has nothing to do with AI. It is an attitude, and it's something that other sectors have developed a lot. For example, consumer goods and fashion, tourism, entertainment are more accustomed to getting inside the customer, inside the consumer. Which is a bad word.
Paolo, do you mind if I cut you off there? Just because I have 4 people I have to bring on.
Yeah, thank you, Jose. As you know,
Speakers.
I have only always a long.
Andrew, can you give us your final word before you bounce?
Sure. What would you like my final word to be?
Your final word, what we want, your closing message
Yeah,
on
I
this
mean, I
event.
think the in the spirit of health AI and aligning culture and whatnot, I think the key thing that I'd like everybody just to remember is don't forget the human and the patient. I think it's very easy to get focused on the concrete details. I think we're all builders here. That's why you're in this conversation in the first place. And with that, we can focus on details, but to step back and really remember, why are we here? And we need that empathy and curiosity that Sarah mentioned early on. And I think through seeking understanding that will build the best solutions possible for patients and ensuring that everybody gets the best care they need.
Thank you, Andrew.